And we're definitely back in the saddle again here on Overdrive. I am your host, Kyle Magda, for the sixth installment. Now, a lot of great topics to get to tonight, but Sean Rutherford, my partner, actually just recorded an F1 edition of Overdrive, and he did an outstanding job covering the Grand Prix of Japan, so kudos to him for that. Definitely, give him a listen, and he also covered the Bathurst 1000 in Australia for the V8 Supercars. So great job, Sean, and keep it up. Now, as he said, I will be covering the NASCAR portion of the show, also maybe some IndyCar. I will also cover, as you've heard in the last couple weeks, ARCA. Actually, I did a special 2013 ARCA season in review episode last week. Hopefully, you got to listen to that, as they had a fantastic year in ARCA and a lot of great things to come for that series. Now, Sean's also going to cover F1, V8 Supercars, World Rally Challenge, or Global Rally Cross. I'm not exactly sure what, but he's going to take over those series that I'm not very familiar with. I mean, I do have somewhat of an idea of Formula One and V8 Supercars. Actually, Marcus Ambrose, as Sean mentioned, actually drove V8 Supercars, and he has been really good on the road courses in NASCAR. He actually has two Cup wins at Watkins Glen. That is a track located in the Finger Lakes region of upstate New York. Now, time to go back to this weekend's races. Now, Cup Series was in Charlotte for the Bank of America 500. Now, Charlotte is the hometown for everybody. That's where all the race shops are located. And the Hendrick Motorsports is right down the road from Charlotte Motor Speedway. So everybody is right in that Mooresville, North Carolina, Charlotte area. And also the Hall of Fame is located in downtown Charlotte. So pretty good place for NASCAR now. Now going into the weekend, Jimmy Johnson and Matt Kenseth, that battle continues. And I remember Jimmy Spencer, a NASCAR analyst for Fox Sports, said that it's probably going to come down to those two home improvement cars, Matt Kenseth in the Home Depot Toyota and Jimmy Johnson in the Lowe's Chevrolet. Now, last week, Jimmy Johnson caught a break at Kansas. Excuse me, the week before, because he actually thought he had an engine going down and finished 6th. And Matt Kenseth didn't have the best day, but he finished 11th, and he had a 3-point lead leaving Kansas. Now, Jimmy is still right there, even though he got a break. And as Kevin Harvick said at California in 2010, Jimmy Johnson has a horseshoe up as you know what. So definitely that 48 car gets a lot of breaks. So this week at Charlotte. Now, early on in the race, it was pretty much all Hendrick dominance. Now, Jimmy Johnson made his way up to the front. Jeff Gordon started on the pole. And Kevin Harvick started second. Now, Kevin Harvick is coming off a win at Kansas, and my initial thought was, for qualifying on last Thursday night, was that if Kevin Harvick wins the pole again, I'm picking him to win the race on Saturday night. He was second, so I was kind of back and forth. And Sean and I actually do our own fantasy picks, and we have fun with it. We pick who's going to win each week, and it's a lot of fun. And I was thinking, who am I going to pick for this race? Now, it was a lot of great things. I was thinking Casey Kane, but that was taken. So I was like, I'll go with Kurt Busch. Looked pretty good in practice. He's still looking for his first one of the year for the Furniture Row team, and he'll be actually heading to Stewart Haas Racing next year in their 4th car. Probably going to be the number 41, which are the numbers that are opposite to Tony Stewart's number 14 car. So early on in the race, it looked like Casey Kane was the guy to beat for the longest time. First 130 laps. And then a lot of green flag runs during the race, and Jimmy Johnson took over. Now, folks, you didn't miss a lot. There was a lot of green flag action during this race. Not many cautions. But the second half of that race, it was pretty much all Jimmy Johnson till about late in the race, about 20 something to go. Now, it was pretty much Johnson, Kane, Kyle Busch in the top five. Brad Keselowski was also up there as well. Matt Kenseth was making his way up to the front. But late in the race, just made some green flag pit stops, and the leaders had to make a decision. Now, do you go with 2 tires or 4 tires or even no tires? Now, it seems like I repeat myself every week when I say track position means everything. Guess what? It does. Because if you have the clean air, most of the time you're going to win the race. Just how it is. That's how Kevin Harvick won last week at Kansas. And he got the clean air and he drove away from everybody. He had a good enough car and he just drove away. Now, Casey Kane decided to take 2 tires. So did Jeff Gordon. Now, those two had the lead, but the first car with 4 tires and third was Jimmy Johnson. Now, you're thinking, is 2 tires going to hold up against 4? Well, we're going to find out. Now, on the ensuing restart, Jimmy didn't really get going that well and actually made it 3 wide behind him, and Brad Keselowski stormed right to his outside and blew right past him and never looked back. So Jimmy didn't get going. He had a good race car, but it took his car time to get going. And when you only have 20-some to go, you got to drop it a green flag. It's all or nothing. You have to go get it. And Jeff Gordon, he fell back a little bit. I think he finished 7th or 8th. And I think he was 7th, but he was up there. I mean, it wasn't a bad call. I mean, he was running top 10 anyway, so it didn't really matter. But Brad Keselowski wound up making his way up to the front. And actually, Jeff Gordon was 7th, so I was right. Brad Keselowski wound up making his way up to the front and really starting to run down Casey Kane. Now, Brad has 4 tires, and he ran about top 5 most of that race, and he just worked his way up there, and slowly but surely he got in the back bumper of Casey Kane. Now, catching a guy is one thing, passing him is another. Now, definitely you're thinking, is he going to get around him? Because Casey Kane had a really good car, but after trying multiple times during the race and just finally getting it with 10 laps to go, Brad Keselowski finally gets around Casey Kane, and Brad never looks back. And now Brad Keselowski has had a absolute terrible season after winning the championship last year. I mean, it's not been terrible, but it's not been that great because he actually missed the chase for the Sprint Cup this year. Now, I don't know if he's hung over from last year, from the championship, but he was the first champion to miss the chase since Tony Stewart did in 2006. Now, Brad's been close to victory lane. He almost won at Watkins Glen, but he wound up finishing runner-up to Kyle Busch. That was a good finish. And really, it was going to be tough. And he finally sealed the deal, and he won his first race of the season at Charlotte. So, a little morale booster for that team. He's having a rough season, so maybe it'll help boost. Casey Kane wound up finishing 2nd. Matt Kenseth was 3rd. Jimmy Johnson was 4th. And Kyle Busch rounded out the top 5. Now, leaving Charlotte, Matt Kenseth still had the points lead because it just seems like those two, he and Jimmy Johnson, do not want to get away from each other. So there's a lot of interesting things that are going to happen this week. So, didn't gain any ground on Jimmy. Actually, Jimmy Johnson lost a point. And, because it was at 3 points, and Matt Kenseth led a lap, so he had increased the lead from 3 to 4. But every point matters. Just ask Carl Edwards from 2011. Every single point matters. Now, Nationwide was also at Charlotte, and that was a pretty good race. Now, you have Sam Hornish Jr. and Austin Dillon, both battling for the Nationwide Series title. Now, Austin Dillon is presumably going to Cup next year. Going to probably take over Kevin Harvick's car because Harvick's going to Stewart-Haas next year. Now, Sam Hornish Jr., on the other hand, has no ride next year. That 12th car he's driving will not be in existence next year. And he's just looking for a ride. So pretty much he's auditioning for a job right now. And he's done pretty good. Now, Sam Hornish, when he actually was an IndyCar driver, drove for Panther Racing from about 2001 to 2003 3 or 4, and he won 2 championships with them. Now, he did a really good job for them. Then he wound up going to Penske in IndyCar, and he did a good job for them, but then he wanted to go stock car racing. Now, ran a few races in Sprint Cup races in 2007 toward the end of the season, made his debut at Phoenix. So he had a little bit of experience, and he actually ran some nationwide as well that year. And 2008, he went full-time. He didn't have really a very successful transition. Now, that's been an issue with IndyCar drivers going to NASCAR lately. Now, Tony Stewart's the only exception. He's had a phenomenal career since leaving the Indy Racing League and going to NASCAR. He's been outstanding, but sometimes it's harder. But Sam Hornish just didn't know what he was going to do, and then actually ran some part-time nationwide in 2011 for Penske and kind of revitalized his career. Got his very first nationwide win at Phoenix in November of 2011, and that pretty much propelled him to run a full season for Penske the next year. Now, he's run 2 full years since in the Nationwide Series, and he's done considerably better. And actually, last year when A.J. Allmendinger was in the 22 car in a Cup Series, now he failed a drug test, and Sam Hornish took over. He had some really good runs. Actually finished 5th in Watkins Glen and looked decent in the car. Better than he used to. So he had a little bit more experience. But the Nationwide was interesting. Now, you have those 2 guys. Then you have the Cup guys like Joey Logano, Kyle Busch. Now, late in the race, actually Sam Hornish Jr. led a lot of that race. Had a good car. Now, late in the race, it came down between Hornish, Kyle Busch, and Austin Dillon. Now, Sam Hornish had a good car on the shorter runs, but his tires went away, and Kyle Busch got to his outside and drove off away from him. Now, Austin Dillon, on the other hand, also got away from him as well. Got past Hornish and he almost passed Kyle Busch when they were battling for second, but Dillon didn't get it by Kyle Busch, but Dillon got by Hornish for second, and Austin Dillon tried his hardest to get by Kyle Busch, but he couldn't do it. So the 54 team gets their 11th win of the year with Kyle Busch, and the great part is Kyle Busch's car, his sponsor is Monster Energy. Since it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month in October, all of the proceeds from that, all the race winnings from that win went to breast cancer awareness. So very good for that, and the Bushes, kudos to them. So we're going to take a short commercial break, and we will be back with some recent NASCAR news to get you caught up, and pretty big actually. And also some news on the Sprint Cup Series schedule, so stay tuned. You're listening to Overdrive with Kyle.
Life's the same, I'm living in stereo. Life's the same, except for my shoes. Life's the same, you're shaking like tremolo. Life's the same, it's all inside you.
We're back after a short commercial break. I also wanted to mention that almost forgot to mention that Austin Dillon has an 8-point lead on Sam Hornish Jr. in the Nationwide Series standings, and he doesn't have a win yet in the year. So we'll see if Austin can pull it off and see if he can grab a win. So now, some big news coming out. Now, we all know about Michael Waltrip Racing manipulating the outcome of the chase that wound up giving Martin Truex Jr. a spot in the chase because of Clint Bowyer's spinning to cause a late caution in the Richmond race. And a couple days later, NASCAR reviewed the tapes and decided that each team is going to be penalized 50 points. That leaves Martin Truex Jr. out of the chase, puts Ryan Newman back in the chase. And then later in the week, there was some controversy with the radio between Joey Logano's team and the Front Row Motorsports team. And what NASCAR decided to do was add a 13th driver to the chase for the Sprint Cup, which was Jeff Gordon, because before Bowyer's spin, he was in the chase, and they decided to give it to him because he was at an unfair disadvantage. So, but since MWR manipulated the outcome of the race, nothing good has happened. It has been hit after hit for them. Now, a week or two ago, Martin Truex Jr.'s sponsor, Napa, announced that they were leaving the team in response to all the incidents that happened. Now, this is a huge blow to the team. And Napa's been with Michael Waltrip since 2001. Since Michael Waltrip was racing for Dale Earnhardt Incorporated, he's been with them ever since. So, and really, and the other sponsors, 5 Hour Energy for Clint Bowyer's car and Aaron's for Brian Vickers, both decided to stay, so they will sponsor next year now. A really big blow to them was that Michael Waltrip Racing announced their 2014 plans. They're only going to field 2 full-time cars next year. That'll be Bowyer in the 15 with his 5 Hour Energy sponsorship, and Vickers in the 55 with the Aaron sponsorship. The third car will wind up being a research and development car. It will only run part-time. Now, team owner Michael Waltrip will run the car in the Daytona 500 next year. Now, Martin Truex Jr. is out of a ride now. Now, I don't know if he's out of a ride, but he is looking elsewhere, and really not a lot of options out there, but one that has been brought up that I keep hearing is the 78 Furniture Row car. Now, that's a pretty good ride. Kurt Busch is in the chase with that team. A single car operation out of Denver, Colorado now. It's a really good ride. You have engines from Richard Childress Racing, all the equipment, you can share it. So, I'm not sure where Martin's going to end up, but he may end up there because that spot is open for him to be there. So we'll see what happens. Also, another devastating thing to MWR. Well, not truly devastating, but it does hurt. But Brian Vickers will miss the rest of the season. Actually, there is a blood clot found in his leg, and it will force him to miss the rest of this season, but he hopes to be back next year. Now, no driver has been announced to replace him in the 55 just yet. But Michael Waltrip was already scheduled to run this week at Talladega in the 55. That was already his scheduled race, all before Mark Martin went to Stewart-Haas Racing to fill in for Tony Stewart. So, this also applies to Brian Vickers' full-time nationwide card at number 20 for Joe Gibbs Racing. No substitute driver has been announced yet. There are some possibilities. Maybe Matt Kenseth, maybe Darrell Wallace Jr., who drives in the Truck Series for Kyle Busch Motorsports. Personally, I like to see Joey Coulter in the car because he needs to get more track time. Now, he has 3 starts this year in Nationwide. He ran 2 starts in the 54 car for Joe Gibbs Racing, and he also ran the 18 car at one time at Kentucky in September for JGR. So, I like to see Joey Coulter in the car because I think he needs more track time in those cars. Because he's mainly been the Truck Series most of his NASCAR career, so, and in ARCA too. But I like to see him get some more track time. That's up to JGR. That's just my opinion. So now Brian Vickers, this isn't the first time. Now, actually, he had to miss most of the 2010 season due to a blood clot found in his leg. I don't know if it was found in his leg, but he had issues with blood clots before, but he had to miss the season. But the last 2 years of his career have changed dramatically. Now, in 2002, he started in the NASCAR Busch Series with his family-owned team, and then Rick Hendrick, actually Rick Hendrick's son, the late Ricky Hendrick, wound up finding Brian Vickers and put him in the number 5 Busch car. It's now the Nationwide Series, but it was Busch Series back then. And Brian Vickers winds up in his first year for Hendrick Motorsports, wins 3 races, and then wins the Busch Series championship, becoming the youngest driver to win the championship at 20 years old. Now, no driver has ever been younger than him to win the championship. Now, then went to drive the 25 car for Hendrick Motorsports in the Cup Series. Had some good runs. He actually had a win at Talladega in 2006. I don't think if you ask Dale Jr. and Jimmy Johnson, they're still not happy about it, but he won the race. And then he actually went to drive for the new Red Bull team when Toyota came into the sport in 2007, actually to the Cup Series in 2007. Didn't have much success there, but in 2009, had a really good year. He actually won his first race that year at Michigan in August. And really, from then on, he actually rallied his way and got Red Bull into the chase for the first time ever. And that was great. But then 2011 came around, out most of 2010. 2011 came around and it just didn't do that good. He had a lot of issues with drivers, especially Matt Kenseth toward the late of the year, and he would just remember Martinsville. They just kept wrecking each other, and it was just nuts. And then Phoenix, they wrecked each other again. It was just crazy, but it turned off a lot of people. But then 2012, Michael Waltrip Racing decided to run him part-time in the 55 car just for a couple races, and he ran at Bristol in 2012, and he actually led 100 and some laps of that race, and he wound up getting a top 5 that day, and he really showed a lot of people. And then this year, he actually wound up winning at New Hampshire in July. A full-time nationwide driver back winning a cup race, but it was definitely well earned, and he definitely earned it. But hope that Brian Vickers gets well soon, so hope to see him back at the track. So we will take another short commercial break, and we will preview this weekend's races. So stay tuned. You're listening to Overdrive here on Spreaker.
One, two, three. Turn it up. Big wheels keep on turning, carry me home to see my kids. Singing songs about the Southland. I miss Alabama once again, and I think it's the same. Yes. Well, I heard Mr. Young sing about her. Well, I heard O'Neill put her down. Well, I hope Neil Young will remember. I said that man don't need him around anyhow. Sweet home Alabama, where the skies are blue. Sweet home.
We're back after a short commercial break. Take you guys for the cup races. You guessed it right. It is in Talladega, Alabama, at the Talladega Superspeedway. Now, superstition has it that Talladega Superspeedway was built on old Indian burial grounds. That's why it's had some interesting wrecks and crashes over the year, and a lot of strange things happening there. But that's just the legend. So we'll see what happens. But also a few things I just want to mention. I almost forgot to mention. Cameron Haley won the K&N Pro Series West race out in Roseville, California, not far from where Sean Rutherford used to live. And it was his first K&N Pro Series West win of the year. And Derek Thorne still leads the points after he actually dominated most of the night, but did not pull it off. And good for Cameron Haley. Actually, he won the UNOH Battle at the Beach K&N Series race at Daytona back in February. So good for him. So I also want to mention that the 2014 Spring Cup Series schedule is out this week. And not many changes. The only major changes is that Kansas and Darlington swap spring dates. So Kansas will move to Mother's Day weekend, and actually will be the first night race ever held, Cup night race held at the track. And Darlington will move to April. And Texas Motor Speedway's Cup race in the spring will move from Saturday night to Sunday, just because of the Final Four coverage, so it doesn't overlap, and NASCAR doesn't lose any viewers, which is, I think, a smart move. So good for that. And also, since we're in this area, Pocono will have 2 dates next year, on June 8th, 2014, and also on August 3rd, 2014. Both weekends will have the ARCA Racing Series, and the August weekend will also have the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series. So go and check that out. So now we're going to preview this weekend's races. Now, IndyCar has its finale at the Auto Club Speedway out in California, the MAV TV 500. Now, the last 3 years, the champ going into the final race did not win the championship. That was Will Power the last 3 years, and he lost the championship every single year. Now, it's been rough for Will Power. He's been close, but he's not going to do it this year. But Scott Dixon's currently leading the point standings, and if you told me in July he was going to win the championship, I would have said you're nuts. And what really sparked his season was, I was there. He actually won the IndyCar race up at Pocono Raceway, and that turned his whole year around, because the next weekend at Toronto he swept the doubleheader races that were run there. So that team's been on a roll, and pretty much Elio Castroneves has been just had bad luck, a string of bad luck lately. So we'll see what happens there. So it's going to be a good fight between Dixon and Castroneves for the title. Both have won championships, so we'll see what happens there. So it's going to be interesting. And the NASCAR K&N Pro Series East is at Road Atlanta now. Dylan Kwasniewski only has a 5-point lead on Brett Moffitt heading into the finale now. The other time that the K&N East was at a road course was at Virginia International Raceway back in August, and Dylan Kwasniewski won the race. So good things for him, and hopefully no bad luck, but that's going to be an interesting battle, as Brett Moffitt has finished runner-up in the NASCAR K&N Pro Series East standings the last 3 years. So we'll see how that goes. And the Cup Series will be, of course, at Talladega. Now, Mark Martin put this best to describe Talladega races. It's the lottery, because you don't know if you'll be in the big one or you'll be up in the lead in the battling for the win. Last year's race, Tony Stewart was leading on the last lap. Went down to try to block Michael Waltrip, and 26-car wreck happened. So just the unpredictability of that race, and also the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series are also at Talladega. Now, not many Cup guys are running it. Kyle Busch will be in it in the 51 truck, and that same thing. It's just you don't know the unpredictability of restrictor plate racing is out of this world, and you don't know if they're going to wreck or what's going to happen. So it's going to be an interesting weekend of racing, and I can't wait. So we'll see. This will probably be the turning point in the chase, if you're in the big one or not, or you're up front. But Talladega race in May was outstanding. So I'd like to thank you all for listening tonight. Thanks to Sean for his F1 episodes, and keep it stay tuned. Thanks for listening to Overdrive, and good night.